Hi, I'm Brett Ullman, and welcome to Parenting, Navigating Everything, the channel where we equip and empower parents to navigate all aspects of parenting in this modern culture today. What I want to do is I want to do a bunch of different videos on anxiety, depression, and panic, but I thought before I do that, I would kind of share my own journey, my own story. I do have an entire talk on mental health called The Walking Wounded, but today, let me just kind of go through my journey for you. If you don't know me, I spent 10 years teaching for the Toronto District School Board, and those were the years that I began speaking as well. And my speaking kind of grew to a place where I couldn't speak and teach. It was just too much. I found myself teaching all week and then hopping on a plane on Friday to go to Halifax, coming home Sunday night and going back to work. And we had 2 kids at the time. It was kind of chaos. So I left teaching and I actually went down to half-time teaching, and then the year later I left teaching and went into full-time speaking. That was the year I also got accepted to a program called the Aero leadership program. It's a great multi-year leadership program. I'll put the links in the notes below. But it was another couple of years of trying to raise more money again for the Aero program. And I left Aero and went straight into a master's degree down at Wheaton Grad School in Chicago. Now, I loved it. I had a great time. Some great friends went with me, but I began to slowly unravel. My speaking dates went from 125 a year to almost 250 to 300 a year. I remember once speaking 32 times in 14 days. Now, people might say that's impossible. I remember once speaking 4 times in a day. The reality was every time I'd speak, I would kind of say to myself, well, I can pay for my flight, or I can now eat or have lodging when I go to school. But my friends and family and everyone would say to me, you're doing too much. You got to pull back. And I just kept saying the same thing to everybody. I kept saying March 1st, 2012. Because when March 1st, 2012 comes, that's the day I will graduate, and then I can rebalance my life. I actually wrote a big document of how I'll rebalance my life and my family and all these other things. And so I made it. I reached March 1st, 2012, and that morning I woke up a bit early, which was kind of weird. I kind of assumed that after years and years of all this work that I might sleep in just a little bit, but I didn't. And over the next few months, I wasn't sleeping at all. I was just waking up weird and tingly and tired, and every day I'd be more exhausted than the next. I was speaking at a church in Chatham, and it was the first time I had something happened to me out of the normal in this journey. I was in front of, I forget how many hundreds of people, and right in the middle, the world turned sideways. Not I'm a fast talker, and sometimes when you talk, you actually can see some, the little stars or snow, you call it. This wasn't that. This was like the world turned sideways. My knees buckled, I broke out in goosebumps, I lost my breath, and for the first time in almost 15 years, I asked for a break in the middle of one of my talks. I found myself a few minutes later with a nurse talking to me, and I'm drinking a little juice box, and they're wondering if I'm diabetic. And I had no idea what was going on. And I ended up finishing the talk, and I went to my doctor the next day, and he says, I think you have anxiety. And I'm like, no, I speak on anxiety. He said, no, you have anxiety. There's this really weird dialogue. And he put me on some medications, and I went home. And a few weeks later, I was speaking at a camp, I think it was called Camp Caroline out in Alberta. And I had a horrible flight, and I had a horrible drive to the camp, and I did not feel well at all. And I'm the speaker for this weekend for the entire retreat. I'm speaking to students and parents, and I had my first panic attack. And if you understand panic attacks, it's the idea of fight or flight. And I fled. This was the first time that I had a panic attack, and I didn't really understand it. I knew I drove away, and I headed to the airport, and I kind of cocooned myself in a hotel for 2 days until I could fly home. Went back, went to my doctor. Now I'm not sleeping at all, and all these other things, more medications and more conversations, and then I seemed to be okay again. And so I'm back on the road, and I'm speaking at, I think it was 10 Catholic high schools in the Windsor area, southwestern Ontario. And I did my first talk, and the world was spinning again. And the next morning, I found myself crying in my car. And that's not normal. Like, nothing's happened. There's been no death. There's been no tragedy. I'm just suddenly crying in my car. And I knew that I wasn't okay. At that time, I had numerous specialists. I had psychologists, I had a few counselors, I had a sleep specialist, and my sleep specialist was stacking medications to just try to force me to sleep. I hadn't slept now for March, April, May, June, and into July. I began feeling a little bit better. Just a bit, and I was kind of getting my life back, and I was supposed to be speaking at a camp called Lakeshore Pentecostal Camp. We were actually spending a week renting a cottage, and I was going to do a few sessions as well. I went boating with some friends for the day, and I remember smiling. I remember being on the tube with a friend of mine, and just for the first time in a long time, smiling and thinking, maybe I'm coming out of this. It didn't really last long, though. We went to McDonald's after our boating, and I'm leaving McDonald's, and it was one of the weird, I actually call this my breakdown moment. I came out of the McDonald's, and I thought that I was being hit by a car. And it was weird. Everything's kind of in slow-mo in my head, and I'm looking down at the car, but the car's not moving. I'm actually falling into the car, and I remember calling for my wife, and she took my arm, as you would a blind person, and walked me to our car and drove me back to the cottage we had, and I went straight to bed. And the next day I got up, and we were leaving, and I'd get 3 or 4 cottages down, and my hands would start to shake, and I didn't really understand, and so I kind of told my family to go without me. And I remember thinking, what were people thinking of me? I had lots of friends who were there, and I couldn't leave this cottage, and I didn't really understand that this wasn't normal. What's wrong with me? I didn't leave the cottage for the whole week, and then I came home, and I didn't leave my house for months. I mean, I had to go to the doctor sometimes. I remember kind of just going to a doctor and sitting on the steps and going up 10 steps and sitting again. These small little things is all I could do, but I didn't basically work for almost a year. My days at home for me were slow. They were dark. They were this never-ending journey into this unknown. I'm 5 years past that. I'm 5 years past that time at home, and I'm working now. You know, I'm not better, but I often say I'm not who I was, but I don't yet know who I am. And the truth is, I'm still a bit lost in this journey. Still have not slept through the night, not one single night's sleep in 6+ years. I still have anxiety. I still have panic attacks, even though not as frequently as I used to, which used to be 2 times a day. My last one now was back last summer. I had a friend of mine on my ball team give me a set of Jays tickets, and they were one of the nicest seats I've ever had. They were the seats where you sit. If you're from Toronto area, it's the 200 level in the small section, and they actually bring your food right to you. And I got there, and I knew from the first inning that it was going to be a long baseball game. I'm doing my belly breathing, and I'm not feeling great. By the 6th inning, I said to my wife, I think we're going to have to go. And we ended up leaving. And by the time I hit Ripley's, believe it or not, which is the aquarium right next to, or the Ripley's aquarium, sorry, right next to the Jays game, I didn't know if I was going to have to sit on the ground. And I remember just feeling discouraged and thinking, like, I'm a 45-year-old guy, and I can't even stay at a Jays game. I still have good days, and I have okay days, and I have rough days. Pope Francis says recovery is making a life despite limitations. And that's my goal these days. Working hard at being a better father, a better husband, a better speaker, doing these videos, trying to help other people. I think it's really important to share stories. This is mine. I'd love to hear yours. My goal is to post many videos dealing with anxiety and depression and panic in the future. What to do, how do we notice these things in our kids as parents, and what do we do to help our kids and ourselves? Below, I'm going to add a link to my book Reset, which is basically all about my breakdown, as well as 18 other stories. Feel free to click the link. I'm going to give you a free link, and if you want to buy it, it's only $1 on Amazon. I'll give you both, and if you like it, please leave some feedback. I'm also going to do a link to my entire talk on mental health called The Walking Wounded as well. Hopefully, my journey has made some of you think about your own journeys. And as I said, let me know your journeys, and you'll see some new videos upcoming on anxiety, panic, and depression soon. Have a good day. Bye.